Hi, my name is David Hawes. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. Today's video, we're talking about how you can raise your vibration or how you can move up the scale of consciousness. This is becoming more and more mainstream topic of conversation. We're starting to learn what the scale of consciousness even is and how it affects our lives. For me, the introduction to the map of consciousness that was created by Dr. David Hawkins was the first kind of insight that I had to where I currently was. It was kind of like a GPS, where I currently was and where I could go. And if you want to just Google the map of consciousness, you'll see the different levels of consciousness and how you can begin to move up that scale. But ultimately, the process of raising our vibration or moving up the scale of consciousness is through the process of surrender or through the process of letting go. So most people have trouble with surrender. So we're going to focus on letting go. But before we do that, why do you want to move up the scale of consciousness? Why is it important for us to continue on the path to continuously evolving and continuing to move up this scale? And the reason being is because every time we move up a point, even 1 point, and the scale of consciousness is a logarithmic scale, starting at 0, going to 1,000, and every point you move up is 10 times more powerful than the point before. So if you're in the state of anger, for example, and you're able to move to the state of courage, anger's at 150, courage is at 200, right? It's a huge shift in your life. And this is something that I experienced personally. I was someone that was always in the state of anger. I was also in the victim mindset or an apathy, which is all the way down at level 50. But slowly, I learned through the process of letting go how to move up the scale of consciousness, and my life dramatically improved. Not only was I less stressed, I got into better shape, my businesses began to flourish, my relationships began to flourish, I was just overall more happy. And this is ultimately what we all want. We want more happiness, more fulfillment, more joy, more love, more compassion out of life. And we continuously get caught in the egocentric game of looking out there to obtain these states of consciousness. But the truth is that these states of consciousness already exist within inside ourselves. We just have to learn how to uncover them. So today what I want to do is give you a few tips on how you can begin to raise your vibration or how you can begin to move up the scale of consciousness. And the first thing is just to become aware of what the ego is. So the ego ultimately is our minds, and there's no need to demonize the ego. The ego is essentially created to make sure that we stay safe. So when you're a little kid, if you touch a hot stove and you burn your hand, you realize don't touch a hot stove anymore. The problem being with the ego is that it is constantly doing this at all times, not just with physical harm that's being done to our bodies, but also with emotional pain that we feel. All right? So when we feel emotional pain, the ego immediately goes to work to make sure that we don't feel that pain anymore. And I can probably best describe this to you through an example. When I was 9 years old, my mom died of cancer. And I can remember walking in to the funeral home, and the grief was so debilitating that it brought me to my knees, essentially. I remember I barely even walk. I had to sit down in a chair. I was just crying and sobbing, little 9-year-old kid seeing his mother in the coffin. And I can remember that grief. But right away, my ego went to work to begin suppressing and repressing, meaning shoving it so far down and burying it so far that I would never even remember it. It was through the process of letting go that I learned how to reconnect to that grief. And I know what you're thinking is why would you ever want to reconnect to that grief? And the reason being is because that grief, the way the ego protected me from feeling that grief was by creating survival patterns. And these survival patterns protect me from ever feeling the grief again. And ultimately what it ended up doing was kind of closing my heart, right? And not allowing people in, not allowing people to get too close to me because I was fearful that I would feel that grief again. So through the process of letting go, I learned how to reconnect to that emotion, allow myself to fully feel the emotion finally for the first time, and then I was able to become free of it. This is how we let go. We allow ourselves to go back to that moment. We identify where that negative emotion began in our lives, and we feel the emotion fully until it no longer has any power over us. Another example of how this could be described, the letting go process, is if you had a fear of heights and you couldn't even climb up one rung on the ladder. Well, the way to overcome the fear of heights is to climb up that one rung, have the courage to stay with the fear, until the fear subsides, and then take another step up to the next rung of the ladder. This is how we let go. We just allow ourselves to fully embrace the emotion. But it's not that simple, right? Because our ego is so efficient at protecting us. So it sounds easy enough, oh yeah, just let this stuff go. But most of us have developed these patterns, these programs, these beliefs over our whole entire lives. So unprogramming ourselves from all of these devices that the ego has used to protect us is an ongoing process. So let me take this a step further. At all times, there's always something to be let go of. It is in the present moment that everything is perfect. The ego, in fact, cannot even exist in the present moment. It only exists in the past or in the future. So if you just sit quietly, the first thought that comes into your mind is probably a thought that is connected to some sort of program that your ego has created to protect you from feeling some sort of pain. So once that thought pops into your mind, you can then begin to ask the question, why am I having this thought? Where did this thought begin? Why am I thinking about the future? You know, whatever it may be, and you can kind of go down the road to determine what emotion is connected to that thought, and then what original incident is connected to that emotion. Once you do that, you can allow yourself to connect fully to that emotion from that incident, and then you will be free of the fear of feeling that emotion, and you will also be free of all the thoughts that are associated with that emotion. This is the process of surrender. But it goes a step further. There are other things to let go of. Also, we need to learn to let go of all of our attachments, all of our opinions, all of our positions. So the letting go process is continuous. We even have to learn how to let go of other emotions that we think might be beneficial, such as desire, right? We think desire is a good thing because it gets us to where we want to go. But the problem with desire is that ultimately what we're saying is that our life isn't good enough as it is now. We need to add something out there in order to feel more fulfilled. So even learning what these seemingly positive emotions are and how they are limiting us. All of these negative emotions create survival patterns that limit our greatness. And it is our job, our duty, it is our karmic responsibility, I guess you could say, to learn and discover what these patterns and programs are and learn how to become free of them. This is the process of letting go, and this is how we move up the scale of consciousness. If you learn how to let go of the anger that you've been holding on to for so long, naturally you're going to be a more joyful, energetic, and loving person. This will dramatically improve your life. So this is the process of letting go, but I want to leave you with a few other practical tools that you can use, and you can start implementing them right now today. The first one is just to begin to observe. Observe what the thoughts are that are going through your mind. This is like the number one thing I tell all of my clients. Without the awareness of a problem, we cannot resolve a problem. So take a second today, maybe right after this video, and just close your eyes and just listen to your thoughts. Just observe them and take note of where your thoughts are kind of reoccurring. Are they more in the past? Are they more in the future? Are they about a certain person, a certain incident? Take note of where the mind is constantly going. The second thing is to observe our emotions. When we get into heightened states of anger, or we get into the victim mentality, we're feeling sorry for ourselves, when we're trapped in grief and we can't let go of the pain of the grief, these are the emotions that we are here on this earth to transcend. So just bringing awareness to them is the first step in the process of letting go and the process of moving up the scale of consciousness. Once we learn what they are, we can then go to work at releasing them. And then finally, after we release them, we can then go to work to installing new patterns, new programs that we take on consciously instead of subconsciously like we did throughout the course of our whole entire lives. Some other things that you can do is you can read the book Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. It's an amazing book, and it really lays out the map of consciousness and how we can transcend these lower states of consciousness that are preventing our greatness. Another great tool is A Course in Miracles, which is a lesson a day for 365 days, so a lesson a day for the entire year. And these lessons are going to help you to come to the realization of how your thoughts are limiting your ability to move up the scale of consciousness. The third thing is you have to have a belief in something higher than yourself. This is I don't even want to use the word God because people get so turned off by the word God, but you could believe in love, you could believe in the universe, you could believe in infinite intelligence, but having a belief in something higher than yourself creates the humility required to come to the realization that we know very little in the grand scheme of things. And with that humility comes this innate curiosity that we want to continue learning and continue growing. Finally, the last thing that you need to implement to move up the scale of consciousness, to increase your vibration, is you need to have a daily spiritual practice. Whatever that may look like. It could consist of journaling, going for a walk, meditating, learning. However that spiritual practice is, could be going to church. It doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter what it looks like, but you have to have a dedicated spiritual practice that you go to consistently, because it is through small, daily, consistent tasks that we are able to achieve great things. So if you implement these steps, you'll begin moving up the scale of consciousness. You'll begin experiencing all of the joy, all of the abundance, all of the love, all of the compassion that exists in these higher energy fields. So thanks for taking the time to listen, and I hope that this video helps you on your journey to move up the scale of consciousness.